Hi, welcome to the Data Standard Experience. I'm your guest host for today, Gideon Rubin. On our show today, we have Mickey Alon, the CTO and founder at Gainsight. Today, we're going to be speaking about using data for marketing automation. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Where are you located right now?
I'm from South Bay, moved from Tel Aviv, Israel 8 years ago as part of building a local presence to a former startup actually I founded.
Oh, nice. And tell us a little bit about your background. I'd love to hear more.
Awesome. So my background is coming from computer science and also did my MBA degree, but started coding at age 13, more or less, kind of a geeky with regards to computer science and building actually software and products. I've dealt a couple of years with real-time analytics in the financial markets, and then also started two companies. One was about website, web, and brand experience that kind of applied the same elements of taking decision in real time and delivering a better experience for customers. And now recently I've co-founded Gainsight PX, the product experience platform that is the same. It's just dealing with a lot of data, taking those insights, driving results, and just delivering better customer experience in the end.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you've done some similar things over the years. Do you have best practices that you would share that you think you've learned over kind of these different iterations?
Problems. It's always about the data. In the end, it's and you want to make sure that you're driving outcome for your customers. So one of the best practices is obviously always focus on the problem, and as they always say, try to build something that is 10x better. So usually I try to focus on hard problem to solve. Back then, it was just as in the area of marketing automation. We had the market move towards more online and digital. So focusing on the problem is great. What are you trying to deliver? What type of solution, and how the solution will actually drive value to your end customers? And can you make it 10x better than the other players? So I think one of the things is just to focus on the problem, and then just don't shy away from big problems. And I remember that, there's over time, over the years, you always find ways to solve those problems and just applying these different strategies. And part of that is, again, like how can you turn those data points into insights and into action. So one other best practice would just to say, like, try to close the loop and not just do part of the problem. Just try to see that you can really take it end to end and just delivering the most value for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important point. Oftentimes, companies come out to solve a problem, but it's not actually the solution for the market or the customers. It is a solution to a problem, but it's not the solution the customers are looking for or expecting, right?
Absolutely. I think that one thing that you don't really control is obviously the market and timing. So for my entrepreneurial background, I would say that you want to kind of sense when the market is ready and how painful is the problem, because those things you can't really control. It's out of your control. You can control what you can focus on and what you're going to deliver, but those two elements led me also back then to kind of go into the marketing space after being in the financial space, and also led me to go into this, I would say, product experience and customer experience space, because the market realization of that is a big problem to go solve just is happening. So I was fortunate to twice go through two M&As and hitting the market with the right product at the right time. And then it was very, very hard, of course, to be in competition, but I think competition is a great thing. And I saw that the problem that we were focusing on and the fact that we built something which is defensible really helped us really scale and deliver the value at the end of the day. Back then it was real-time personalization to your website and enriching data, for example, because you want to make sure that you're able to track the right data. The other challenge would be, how can you really drive insights? And then third, how can you drive results? So these three elements is something traditionally I see companies are struggling with. They find hard to focus on the right data or collect the right data and then driving the right insights. And then once you have the insights, are you able to take action? Are you able to drive results is kind of the challenge. And when you think about the problem, you want to make sure that you're able to drive results, not just help them with one of the elements. In the second startup, I realized that collecting data is something that is not trivial. Most companies are not great at collecting the right data. So in our solution today with Gainsight PX, we automatically collect, for example, any user interaction with any application, any UI. It was very aspirational to say we can collect website, web application, mobile, and even Windows desktop. We want to collect every type of user interaction, synthesize the data, and then help that data become part of the analytics. So the collection of the data is something that is overlooked by many solutions. They assume that the company will have a way to collect the data, but I think that's a wrong assumption. I think that you need to help companies to actually collect the data and to collect the right data, because bad data in will not lead to a great outcome as well.
Yeah, that's true. So in that, what's the hardest part of collecting the data or accessing it?
There's many elements. There's like starting from performance. Everybody's saying like, would aggregate my application performance? So you need to know how to do it in a very effective way with minimal to zero impact on application performance. Because if you're trying to improve user experience, but you aggregate performance, you're just gonna get the wrong results. There's other elements, for example, is volume. You know, if we're tracking today, you know, a lot of hundreds of products and millions of users and billions of user interactions. So scale is definitely something to think about. How can you track that scale, and how can you even build a sustainable business model? Because storing data and processing data is also costly. So how can you make it even very, very effective? So it's about, you know, not being intrusive, scale, and also about security. You want to make sure that you're able to make sure that you're not collecting any PII, not compromising GDPR. All those things are very, very important in these days. So that's also something to think about when you're collecting data. Can you make it safe so your customer is not doing any mistakes and just coming to you and say, hey, we just collected like PII and it's a bad news for everybody. So, and as well as security, as I said before, like security is also an element. When you're collecting data, other people will want to get to that data. And the way you collect data is also another area that hackers, for example, will find very interesting. So you want to make sure that you're aware of the security implication and make sure that you're almost as secure as possible in that respect.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, security is a big issue today, of course, and a lot of challenges with privacy. On the side of scale, it's really interesting because we've talked to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies struggle with the scale and the reality of the world we're in today, where there's much more data than there was in the past. But the next layer that we're starting to hear a lot more about is the real-time aspect. So it's one thing to be able to store a lot of data and put it in a data warehouse somewhere. It's a whole other thing to be able to make decisions based on data that's streaming or in a live environment. I'd love to hear more about kind of how you've dealt with the streaming or live data challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you go into this, there's two paradigms. One is the big data analytics, where customers expect to see data in seconds, minutes, sometimes hours. The aspiration is to be in the seconds space, I would say. But on the real-time side, because as a solution, sometimes you want to trigger real-time action. It might be just, if you're optimizing your ads, for example, it might be that, you need to send a bid in real time. Back then, when I dealt with financial market, it's the real-time decisioning of buy and sell. And today, the real-time might be just the right campaign I want to serve for the users. And real-time is in the space of in the range of the millisecond real-time. And what you have to have with real-time is predictability, because you have just a minimum window to take action, and it has to be sustainable. If suddenly one mistake there or one logical error, suddenly the entire real time just becomes seconds. So from monitoring perspective, everything is green. Nothing actually is not functioning, but from the business perspective, you're not delivering the value. So as soon as you breach that milliseconds range into seconds, that is a breach in your SLA. So there's many things to think about when you think about real-time action. How much data can you analyze in real time? In theory, for example, if we have unlimited time, we can take great decisions. We can scan a ton of data. In real time, you cannot afford. You have to optimize for the best decision within the time, so you can close the loop and do something about that versus, just spending a lot of time, but the customer is already gone. So your answer is great, but there's not anyone to listen. So real time has a lot of challenges, and it starts from how you model the data, How do you process that? How do you guarantee that response time, SLA, for example, the predictability in that? And how can you increase all the time the amount of data you can trigger, you can actually analyze before you come back? And technology is always evolving. So obviously using in-memory is giving us the fastest speed to analyze, but there's a lot to do with the way you model and architect your solution to allow the best of the kind of allowing for the best decision to be made within a very, very short time under a very strict SLA. So it's about the modeling the product, it's about optimizing the size of your data model, optimizing the execution rules. If we're, for example, running 20, 30,000 rules per second, in many cases, and it obviously has to be smart execution, because eventually every user wants to get the right message at the right time within the milliseconds, because they right now are on the website or in your product, and you have just less than 500 milliseconds to close the loop. So that's the world we live in, and the fact that you need to think about the way you build the model, the runtime is critical. And many engineers just usually are kind of focusing on area when seconds is fine, even 3 to 5 seconds is everything. So it's to become an engineer that knows how to deal with real time, you need to kind of shift the way you think about everything you do, starting from coding, the size of object you're building, the way you understand multi-threading. All those elements we actually learn in university, but scarcely apply in our day-to-day, because most applications are fine with 2 or 3 seconds, and your code can be very inefficient and will still work, as opposed to real time, when if your code is not is inefficient, you're not going to be able to deliver that at scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like what you're describing a lot of times in the real-time environment is really user experience. So it's really the customization of how you're delivering to the user. And it's one thing on a website with some content to serve up some better content, right? Or test content, but it's a whole other thing when you're talking about a full product experience, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and where you see the evolution too of where we're at, as far as what expectations are of the customer?
So the expectation is, again, to be able to do the 3 things, like one, to understand where the customer is, because then it will drive the best decisions. If you're limited in what elements, what type of data input you have, then the output won't be as effective. So number one is to really make sure that we are collecting in real time as much data as possible. So we want to understand where the customer is. What did they do in the past 3 months, for example? So there's very simple use cases. I'm building new features. How can I drive you to know those features? And how can I make sure that it's relevant for you? So I need to know, did you use it before? What type of usage pattern do you have? All that type is based on a decision, based on the collection of data that I can do. It means that I want to understand, for example, feature usage. I want to understand who you are as a persona. This has to be part of the model that you're building. So for example, in our solution, we translate and correlate every click the user does to a feature, a module. So we have better context of what you're doing right now, because I don't want to recommend a feature you just clicked on. You just went there and I'm like, hey, learn about this. Like, I already did that a second ago. So best type of message, because we know that today there's many ways to consume content. There's many ways to users choose different ways to use your product. So what would be the best messaging? So the triggering of that message that has to come into the product in real time might be very different. So what you have to do is, on top of the triggering rules, you want to make sure that you have prioritization rules and you have some throttling rules to make sure that you're not interfering with the user interaction, just helping the user but not blocking the users. And if there's collision of different type of messages, they might all be relevant, but the expectation is the system to be smart enough to choose the right one. So in some cases we let the users prioritize, but the vision is to have the system decide what's best, because you might qualify to more than one element. And the last thing is that the expectation is to, now that we are collecting so much data, and in a click of a button today, we can map your entire product, and suddenly you can have visibility to 500 features, where in the past you saw, for example, 10 features, because you had your engineer collect and instrument 10 features. But now suddenly with automation, we can surface all your features. There's a lot of features to instrument. How can I make you smart about the data? Which features you should look at? What type of KPIs and patterns, because as users, we want to get the insights, not necessarily all the reporting, right? We don't want to have yet more data. We want to be smart about the data. So our vision, our goal is to help you distill the right set of data so you can really be better at your job. And that's a challenge, because in data, you know that you need to have the right context and you need to know what is the right thing to surface to a person to assist them with decisioning. So for example, what is the pattern of a good user behavior? What is the pattern of a customer at risk? This type of things we aspire to build using machine learning, just to understand how can I surface things to you? Because as human being, you cannot just digest so much data. You have to get this assistance. So I can point you towards anomalies. I can point you towards customers at most risk that will impact the most revenue for you. Those type of decisions today are manual. Most companies are not good at collecting data. They usually collect what they can, and then they search for based on the data that they have, but they might be missing, around 70% of the potential data they should look at. So there's a lot of challenges, and we are trying to kind of address all of them, from collection to insights to drive action. And our vision is to start to harness machine learning to help us kind of drive better decisions for our end users.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how much are you relying on machine learning models versus, let's say, business rules or just simple regressions? How important is that in your business?
So today I would say that it's still 90% like business rules, but more complex one as well. And some of them are automatic and based on score. Even scoring today, I think it's still eventually business rules. Even if you build very complex scoring, it start to touch some of the kind of statistical modeling, but still it's pretty basic, because you're not, the weights you're putting are not necessarily the more gut feeling or your experience versus the real data analysis that you should be doing. Because so we basically want to give our customers the way to run multiple models based on the data. What we solve for them is actually the collection and the fact that we get clean data in. If we are saying this is a feature used, this is actually a feature, you don't need to worry about what we call the overfitting or too much, junk data. So the cleanliness of the data is one thing that really helps us build better models. We do think that every company should have way more than one model. When you're building predictive models, the way I see it, you need to slice the customer journey into, the different stages and build model to optimize per each. So if you try to have any machine learning to solve a specific problem, I would say you're probably going to have multiple models. And what we want to do is give you the option to just tune the models, run different models, and see what actually performs best based on the goals that you have. For example, if it's trial conversion and you're trying to build a model to say what would be the best features to promote or type of campaigns to run, there's many models you can run. We are going to allow you to run multiple, and then you're going to see the result and you're going to see their accuracy and decide what's best to you. And for onboarding, adoption, retention, all those areas are going to have different models, because you might be even different persona, different segment of companies. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is companies are building a holistic adoption score, one for all. And I think you need at least 20, because you have 5 personas, you have four different cycles, stages in the customer life cycle, and you have different inputs per stage. So I think what we are trying to do is to make it very accessible for you to build models, run them, even if you're not a data scientist, and based on the accuracy, just decide what is the best input and what is the best algorithm to use.
Yeah, that makes sense. With this, when you're working with machine learning models, what would you say is the number one challenge? Sort of working with AI, machine learning. It's exploding everywhere, obviously, but there's still a lot of challenges in the roadway. What would you say some of the significant ones are?
Absolutely. I think if I look back almost, I would say 8 to 10 years ago, when the first time I started using machine learning, back then you had some libraries, but nobody, helped you with collecting data. Nobody helped you with running, for example, all the learning and testing. Basically, you need to have the whole process to run that. So you needed to build those data pipelines to go and basically having the training set and testing set. And so beyond even understand the whole concept, it was just, patching those solutions. And let's say you've past all those obstacles, now you have a model that you want to start running data against it. What will help you serve that? Like just to make it like, because again, we built a content recommendation engine. So for us is we need to ask the model and get the response and render content based on that. So all these were you had to build versus use any type of solution. And over time, we're seeing more and more problems are being solved. And I think in the last couple of years, you're seeing how all the big vendors are now really helping you run models at scale with a lot of data, and even in some points helping you with serving and basically hitting these models and getting responses. So a lot of the obstacles are going down. Now it's the time that I think, the challenge would be like, how do you choose the right data? How do you avoid overfitting? How do you avoid, just being biased because you're bringing a model, a data set you're able to bring. It might not have the answer to begin with. So common sense is always good. And I've seen, super smart people that just like the data source they used, they did not question the data source. They did not question the data quality. They kind of looked at it as kind of an end game. This is the data I have, as opposed to, no, you should be exploring a lot of these different data sets. Maybe the answer is not there. That's a very common mistake. And second challenge is, again, to understand and make sense of it. And again, sometimes you're getting this score and nobody understands why it is. So either they choose to trust it or not trust it. And I think that if you break down to different scores, different models, you'll be able to assess better that this is why you're getting this score, as opposed to a very high level kind of predictive score. And last, I would say it should be designed to assist your decision, not replace your decision. There's always going to be a human factor that will be involved just to understand and tune and feed the algorithm and decide to rerun the model. By the way, there's another element that is very common in financial market. They are rebuilding the model almost nightly, and in the B2B industry, they build one model per year. It just, you basically you have to understand that building models and verifying is something that you need to do more frequently, maybe not every 24 hours, but at least quarterly, at least monthly, and just monitor the quality of the service you're getting from that. But I feel like we are getting very, very close to that, and the market is ready to start understanding and using it, as opposed to the past that people thought it's going to replace human beings, and I don't trust it, and I see a number and I can't make sense of it. So I think it's going to be our future, and you'll see more and more people are getting used to assistants, and we use Google Alexa and all those stuff. But today it's the next generation is obviously completely trusting, AI technologies to driving decisions without any question.
Yeah, and I think COVID, changed a lot of things, obviously, in a lot of ways. But I can tell you that with us and what we look at in our customers, we saw a huge change in their thinking around, because they experienced COVID. They realized what you were just saying, which is, oh, that model that we rebuild once a year, maybe we need to do it more frequently, because they were totally at a loss, when COVID hit, for what to do next or how to really customize the experience for their customers, right?
Yeah, in many cases, what happened is like in most models, you're basically looking backwards on data and driving forward. And when COVID hits, you're not going to see the tree. So understanding that you need to refresh your model and move towards, shorter cycles. And there's a whole element of neural networks. But I think in the classic data science, you want to make shorter windows of time to analyze the data, so you're able to at least react. The other thing is now it's going to become much cheaper to use data science. I think it's more accessible. I think still I see companies that have only specific companies have the luxury and budget to have data science team and to use, those type of processes. But I think in the future, it's going to be available for any size company to start utilizing machine learning, because there's a lot of things to do. And the second thing I see a lot is, again, this scoring model. At Marketo, we had like lead scoring, and most of the lead scoring I've seen by customers is just gut feeling of marketers. They say, if you clicked on this website, you download this white paper, you qualify, and and even they might enrich the data, but to really understand what behavior drives the best conversion, you have to apply machine learning. You have to apply much stronger data analysis, because you have millions of website visitors, for example, or millions of users, and there's no way you'll be able to, with your gut feeling, to score that. Today, we're seeing with customer health score, with product adoption score, there's many scores that the data science teams are trying to build. So when it's a data science team, they tend to know exactly what they're doing, and the score tends to be pretty accurate, but not every company can afford a full data science team and all that kind of data aggregation and processing. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be more affordable to other companies.
Yeah, and it's definitely a huge demand for more data science talent, as we move forward in the world, hoping to make more data-driven decisions, right? What advice would you give to someone seeking a career in data science, based on your experience?
I think that in data science, and again, I always looked at data as kind of what is the oil to drive business results. In marketing, again, it was the input for personalization, for better statistics, for better insights about your customer intent. I think it's important for everyone, data science or engineering, just to really understand and also care about the product and the outcome, just as a general advice. But I think, it's becoming a very needed and required talent in every company. So learning all the tools, applying these different models and learning all the time is going to be very, very useful, because I think, again, the market is now becoming ready for a machine learning driven type of solutions. And I've seen those solutions actually around 2014, like 6-7 years ago. There were a lot of machine learning driven solutions like predictive lead scoring and others that were way ahead of their time. And I think also they lacked some of the technologies that exist today, where now they are very, very successful. Because I think in 2021, 2022, machine learning is becoming very acceptable and accessible. And the need for data sciences to really be able to run those type of motions are increasingly higher as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that now as this whole industry evolves, what we're realizing is that this concept of the growth mindset or learning or continuous learning, when you take people who are most comfortable in math and technology, and then you put them into an environment, which you have to learn, right, to be in that world, but you put them in an environment where they're constantly having to evolve and change and learn about the industry and what's happening, because as you said, a few years makes a huge difference in what we can do and what the costs are in doing that, right?
Absolutely. And I think that they need to question a lot of the kind of facts to begin with, because again, they might just get a problem to solve in the data set, but they need to question, is this really the data set? This is all we have. Can we actually explore? Did we explore other things before you get to this model optimization? Because again, if with bad oil, you can't really have a great, fast moving car. So that's something that you want to make sure that you're always learning. And they need to also understand the space, the problem that they're solving, because otherwise they would not have these kind of curiosity questions. Again, I was in the marketing space or in the financial space. Understanding the paradigms there really helps you as data scientists to understand this might be relevant data, this might be less relevant data, and be more creative there, because eventually it requires you to think what would be the best input to your models and what would be the best models to fit. And again, without knowing the entire spectrum of what you're solving, you might just looking under the flashlight as opposed to look where the data is really exists.
Yeah, where it's representative. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate your time. Where can the community find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. It's Mickey Alon on LinkedIn at Gainsight, and my email is actually mickey@gainsight.com. So feel free to reach out, and happy to advise. Also, we have a lot of content with regards to analytics, product analytics, customer analytics. So happy to, if you have any question around that, happy to take that as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And at the Data Standard, we are building a community of data enthusiasts and data thought leaders. We look forward to engaging with you on our website, datastandard.io, where we regularly post a wide range of podcasts with data executives and offer regular networking opportunities. For more information, visit the website. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.